The keys made a soft sound as they dropped into Mara's hand. A small metallic chime that cut straight through the room. Ethan froze at the front door. Rain still clinging to his jacket. His fingers numb from the cold and from what he was seeing. His parents stood close to his sister, smiling like they had just completed an act of kindness that proved everything good about them. Mara stared at the keys, eyes wide, breath caught between disbelief and joy. "For you," their father said, warmly. "You've been struggling. We wanted to help." Mara laughed, then covered her mouth, then laughed again. "Are you serious?" she asked. Her voice shook. "The new sedan? The blue one?" Their mother nodded, already emotional. "You deserve stability. We know how hard this year has been." No one looked at Ethan. He stayed silent, standing just inside the doorway, listening as if he were an uninvited guest in his own life. The sedan sat outside in the driveway, clean and perfect, water sliding down its hood. 6 months ago, he had signed every paper for that car himself. He remembered the pen in his hand, the weight of the decision, the quiet pride he felt walking out of the dealership alone. It was the first thing he had bought that no one helped him with. Now it was being handed away like a spare coat. Mara finally noticed him. "Ethan," she said, eyes bright. "Did you know about this?" He met her gaze and smiled. It was the same smile he had used his whole life. The one that made people comfortable. The one that said, "It's fine." "Just walked in," he said. Their father cleared his throat. "We talked about it and agreed this made sense. You're doing well. You don't really need it right now." The words landed fast, clean, and final. No discussion. No question. Ethan nodded slowly. Inside, something shifted. Not pain exactly. Pain was familiar. This was sharper. He thought of the extra shifts he had taken. The weekends he skipped. The way he had delayed small joys to afford something meaningful. He thought of how often his parents spoke about sacrifice, usually when asking him to make one. Mara hugged their mother tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll take such good care of it." Ethan watched them, his thoughts moving faster than his face. This wasn't the first time. It was just the cleanest example. His parents always said they treated their children equally. But equality, he had learned, didn't always look fair. Mara's struggles were emergencies. His were expected. They talked about insurance, about gas mileage, about how proud they were. Ethan listened, absorbing every word, every assumption. Not once did anyone ask how he felt. They didn't need to. They already knew the answer they wanted. "I'll make some tea," their mother said finally, moving toward the kitchen. "You look soaked, Ethan." He nodded again, thanked her, and followed with his eyes as she left. His father gave him a brief look, one filled with relief. No resistance, no scene, just like always. But this time, Ethan wasn't swallowing the moment. He was studying it. Later that evening, the house quieted. Mara took the car for a short drive, laughter trailing behind her like music. Ethan sat alone in his old bedroom, lights off, phone in his hand. The document glowed on the screen, plain and official. A legal transfer. Signed. Filed. 2 weeks ago, he had done it after a conversation that refused to leave his mind. His mother had asked what would happen if someone else needed the car more. She had smiled when she said it, like it was hypothetical. His instincts had stirred, subtle but firm. So he acted. Now, as the sounds of the house settled into sleep, Ethan felt a strange calm. The betrayal hurt, but it no longer controlled him. He replayed the moment with the keys, not with anger, but with understanding. His parents believed they were being practical. Mara believed she was being helped. No one believed they were hurting him. That didn't make it harmless. He stood and walked to the window, watching headlights fade down the street as Mara returned. He wondered what it would feel like when the truth surfaced. He imagined confusion, denial, anger. A part of him wanted that moment badly, wanted them to feel exposed. Another part of him hesitated. He wasn't planning revenge out of cruelty. He wasn't interested in humiliation. What he wanted was balance, recognition, a moment where his presence mattered. The house door opened. Voices drifted in. Excited. Happy. Ethan stepped back from the window and sat on the edge of his bed. The path ahead was clear now, even if the outcome wasn't. The keys had changed hands, but the control hadn't. They thought the story was over. For Ethan, it was just beginning. Sleep avoided Ethan that night. He lay on his back, eyes open, listening to the slow tick of the hallway clock and the distant hum of the refrigerator. The house felt smaller than it had during the day, its walls closing in with every thought he tried to push away. His phone rested on his chest, warm from his grip, the legal document still open on the screen. He didn't need to read it again. He knew every word by heart. His mind moved fast, jumping from memory to memory. The times his parents told him to be patient. The times they praised him for being easy. The times Mara cried, and everything shifted to fix her problems while his were quietly ignored. He had never blamed her for it. He blamed the pattern. Tonight, that pattern felt heavier than ever. He turned onto his side and stared at the wall, his reflection faint in the dark glass of the window. The thought of revenge slipped in without force. It didn't shout. It whispered. It showed him scenes of control, moments where he would finally decide the outcome. The car was just a symbol. What mattered was the power behind it. By morning, his jaw ached from clenching it all night. At breakfast, the house buzzed with new energy. Mara talked about routes to work, about music she'd play on the drive, about freedom. Their parents listened with soft smiles, pleased with themselves. Ethan sat at the table, stirring his coffee, nodding at the right moments. His calm unsettled him. It felt unnatural, like standing still in the middle of a storm. His father glanced at him. "You're quiet." "Just tired," Ethan said. It was true, but not in the way they thought. After breakfast, he left the house and walked for hours. The city was loud and alive, full of people who had no idea what he was carrying inside him. He passed car lots, coffee shops, bus stops. Everywhere he looked, someone depended on something. Money, trust, family. He wondered how many people were silently keeping score the way he was. By afternoon, his phone buzzed. A message from Mara. A picture of the sedan parked outside her workplace, shining under the sun. "I still can't believe it," she wrote. "Thank you for understanding." His fingers hovered over the screen. He didn't reply. The days that followed blurred together. Ethan went to work, finished tasks, smiled at coworkers. On the outside, nothing changed. On the inside, he measured every breath. He replayed conversations, imagined future ones. He weighed words like weapons, deciding which ones would cut deepest and which would heal. At night, the question returned again and again. Was he right to feel this way? Or was he just tired of being strong? He opened his laptop and researched. Not the law, he already knew that. He researched himself. Articles about resentment, about boundaries, about family roles that never change unless someone breaks them. Each sentence felt personal, like it had been written with his name in mind. One evening his mother knocked on his door. "You've been distant," she said gently. "Is something wrong?" He studied her face. The concern was real. So was the blindness. He almost told her everything, almost handed her the truth and waited to see if she could carry it. "I'm fine," he said instead. She smiled, relieved, and left. That night he made a list, not of plans, but of outcomes. What he wanted, what he didn't. He didn't want to hurt Mara. He didn't want to tear his family apart. But he also didn't want to disappear anymore. The list grew longer, clearer. At the bottom, he wrote one line and circled it twice. "I want to be seen." The idea of revenge changed shape. It stopped being about taking something back and started being about forcing a moment of truth. He imagined the call from the registration office, the confusion, the pause where reality would finally catch up with their choices. He imagined speaking calmly, without anger, without shouting. That image mattered more than any dramatic outcome. Still, doubt followed him. What if this made things worse? What if they saw him as selfish, ungrateful, cruel? He had spent his whole life avoiding those labels. The fear of becoming the problem was almost enough to stop him. Another message from Mara arrived days later. "The insurance company says there's an issue. Can you call me when you're free?" Ethan read the message twice. His heart sped up, then slowed. This was the moment he had been moving toward without admitting it. The build-up was over. The weight settled into his chest, heavy but steady. He stood by the window again, watching the street below. Children ran past, laughing. A delivery truck stopped, moved on. Life didn't pause for moral struggles. It just kept going. Ethan took a deep breath. He wasn't sure what would happen next. He only knew he couldn't go back to pretending this didn't matter. For the first time in years, he didn't choose comfort. He chose honesty, even if it came dressed as conflict. The phone rang while Ethan was standing in line at a grocery store. He saw Mara's name and felt his body react before his mind did. His shoulders tightened. His breath slowed. He stepped out of line and answered. "Ethan," Mara said. Her voice was thin, confused, stripped of its usual excitement. "They're saying the car isn't fully in my name. The office won't finish the transfer." "Do you know why?" He closed his eyes for a moment. This was it. The moment he had imagined, avoided, and prepared for all at once. The noise of the store faded. All he could hear was her breathing on the other end. "Yes," he said. His voice surprised him. It was steady. "I know why." There was a pause. "What do you mean?" He stepped outside into the cold air. "I signed the car into a trust. Legally, it can't be transferred without my approval." Silence hit hard. He could picture her face, the confusion turning into something heavier. Behind her, he heard his parents' voices, sharp and low, asking questions all at once. "You did what?" his father demanded, suddenly on the line. Ethan leaned against the wall. His heart pounded, but he didn't rush. "I protected myself," he said. Before the keys were handed out. His mother spoke next, disbelief thick in her tone. "Why would you do that without telling us?" The answer rose fast, clear, and unavoidable. "Because no one told me you were giving it away." The words landed. He felt them settle into the space between them like a wall. "That was selfish," his father said. "We were helping your sister." "I know," Ethan replied. "But you didn't ask me. You decided for me." Again, Mara finally spoke. "So, what happens now?" That question carried everything. Fear, guilt, hope. Ethan closed his eyes and saw all possible endings branch out in front of him. He could say no and let the consequences fall. He could demand apologies, force them to sit in their discomfort. He could reclaim the car and drive away, leaving silence behind him like a scar. The power was real. It vibrated through him, tempting and sharp, but something else rose with it. He thought of the long nights convincing himself that keeping peace was strength. He thought of how revenge might feel good for a moment and heavy forever. He thought of who he would become if he chose damage over clarity. "I'm not taking the car back," he said. The reaction was immediate. His parents spoke at once. Mara gasped. Ethan raised his hand even though they couldn't see it, a habit from years of calming situations. "But this doesn't stay the same," he continued. "We're not pretending this was okay." The line went quiet. "You didn't ask me," he said calmly. "You assumed I would accept it. You always do. I'm done with that." His mother's voice softened. "We didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," Ethan said. "But intention doesn't erase impact." Mara's voice shook. "I didn't know. I swear, I believe you," he said. And he did. He straightened, feeling taller than he had in a long time. "The car stays with you," he said to her. "That the ownership stays in the trust for now. We redo this properly. Shared responsibility. Clear rules. No more surprises." His father scoffed. "You're making this complicated." "No," Ethan replied. "You made it simple for yourselves. I'm making it fair." Another pause followed. Longer this time. The kind that forces people to sit with thoughts they've avoided. Finally, his father exhaled. "You should have said something earlier." "I tried," Ethan said. "You just weren't listening." The truth hung there. Undeniable. When the call ended, Ethan stood still, phone in his hand, chest rising and falling fast. The decision had been made. The revenge he imagined had softened into something else. Not mercy. Not surrender. Boundaries. That evening, he returned home. The house felt different. Quieter. His parents looked at him with caution now, like they were seeing a version of him they hadn't prepared for. Mara avoided his eyes at first, then finally met them. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I should have asked questions." He nodded. We both deserved better than assumptions. They sat at the table together, not close, not distant, just real. Papers were discussed. Plans were adjusted. Nothing was fixed in a single night, but nothing was ignored either. Later, alone in his room, Ethan lay back and stared at the ceiling. His hands trembled slightly, the aftershock of standing his ground. He didn't feel victorious. He didn't feel guilty. He felt clear. The revenge he thought he wanted had changed shape at the edge of action. He hadn't burned anything down. He had drawn a line, and for the first time he knew they had seen it. The house settled into a new quiet after that night. It wasn't peaceful, but it wasn't tense either. It was careful. Ethan noticed it in the way his parents spoke to him now. Slower, measured, like each word mattered more than before. He noticed it in the way Mara checked with him before making plans, even small ones. Nothing dramatic had happened, yet everything felt different. A week later, the paperwork was finalized. The car stayed with Mara, but the rules were clear. Costs were shared. Decisions were discussed. Nothing would be assumed. Ethan watched his father sign the documents with a tight jaw. Pride bruised but controlled. His mother said little, though her eyes kept drifting toward Ethan, searching for something she hadn't seen before. When they left the office, Mara walked beside Ethan in silence. The sun was bright, the street loud, life moving without pause. She stopped near the curb and faced him. "I never wanted this to hurt you," she said. "I know," Ethan replied. She swallowed. "I've always been the one they rushed to help. I didn't think about what that meant for you." "That's the problem," he said, not unkindly. "No one thought about it." She nodded slowly. "I am now." That was enough. Days passed. Then weeks. The anger Ethan had carried didn't disappear overnight, but it loosened its grip. He stopped replaying old moments in his head. He stopped waiting for the next disappointment. Instead, he focused on the present, on what he could control. One evening he came home late and found his parents waiting in the living room. The lights were low. The mood was serious. "We owe you an apology," his father said. Ethan didn't sit. He stayed standing, listening. "We relied on you being strong," his mother added. "We told ourselves that meant you didn't need as much." Ethan felt the words land deep, not as pain, but as acknowledgement. "That wasn't fair," she continued. "And we see that now." He nodded once. "I don't need things to be perfect," he said. "I just need to matter." His father looked down, then back up. "You do." The conversation didn't fix the past, but it shifted the future. After that night, Ethan noticed small changes. His parents asked instead of deciding. They checked in. They paused. Mara stopped, leaning so easily on the comfort she'd always been given, and started standing on her own more often. One morning, Ethan walked past the driveway. The sedan sat there, familiar and distant. He didn't feel loss anymore. He felt relief. The car had been a symbol, nothing more. What mattered was what it had forced into the open. He thought often about the moment he could have chosen differently. The moment where revenge was easy. He could have embarrassed them. He could have taken everything back and walked away satisfied, leaving damage behind. Sometimes he wondered how that version of the story would have ended. But when he looked at his life now, he knew the answer. Revenge would have given him silence. This gave him space. One afternoon, Mara offered him a ride. He hesitated, then agreed. The drive was quiet at first, then comfortable. Music played low. The city rolled past them. "You know," she said, eyes on the road, "I used to think strength meant not needing anything." Ethan glanced at her. "And now?" "Now I think it means not taking what isn't yours." He smiled. When they got out of the car, Ethan felt something settle inside him. Not happiness, not pride. That night, he lay in bed and thought about revenge one last time. It wasn't evil. It wasn't weak. It was human. A reaction to being ignored, minimized, erased. Wanting it didn't make him a bad person. Acting on it without thought might have. He had chosen a harder path. One that didn't end with applause or instant satisfaction. One that required patience and honesty. But it left room for growth, for repair, for dignity. Ethan turned off the light and closed his eyes. Revenge promised power. What he chose gave him something better. It gave him himself.